So welcome to this class of ours. So we are going to talk about process costing. We said we shall start from scratch. So we are going to start from scratch. We are going to assume that we haven't done anything concerning process costing. Okay, now when we talk about process costing, we mean that it's a costing method where production follows a series of sequential process. So a particular process is followed until the final product is achieved. So meaning that the process is continuous in nature, meaning that the process is continuous in nature, and therefore a particular sequence is followed before the final product is achieved. Okay, let us start with the definition. We define process. So process. So a process So when we talk about a process, we mean process costing. So process costing, it's our topic. So we are going to talk about process costing. And we say it's a costing method where production follows a particular series. So we say refers to costing method. Refers to costing method used where production follows a series of sequential process. So a particular process is followed before the final output is achieved. So a particular process is followed before the final output is achieved, and therefore the process itself follows a particular series. So we have process A. So for example, in a particular production, so if you want to produce a particular good, so the raw material is first introduced, then the raw material follows a particular process. Maybe it goes to process 1 where it goes to a particular kind of thing, then to another process, and so on, until we come up with the final product. So we say a costing method where production follows a sequential process, which must be a series of processes. Application. So it can be used in oil refining industry. Number 2, food processing. Number 3, we have paper making industry. We have brewing. So brewing ni ile mambo na kutengeneza pombe. So brewing, chemical and drug industry. Chemical and drug industries. So those are some of the applications. That we can talk about them. So when we talk about process costing, it is used in those industries. So oil refining. So before we come up with the main product of oil, so like petrol, kerosene, and diesel, so it have to go through a series of particular processes before the final output is achieved. Also for food processing, when the food is manufactured, these foods which are stored in tins and so on, which you can find in a supermarket. So they go also through a series of processes. So they go also through a series of processes before the final output is achieved. Same to paper making industry, same to brewing, same also to chemical and drug industry. So those are some of the examples about process costing. Let's talk about features or characteristics. Features. Features number one, we can say process operation is continuous. Process operation is continuous. Is continuous process. We can also say, so that is number one. So the process does not stop. So if we start making something, so we shall keep on adding raw material from time to time, and in the process we shall be having output at the same time, from time to time, and therefore the process is continuous. So if we start from process A, we need to continue producing until we reach to the final process. Number two. So there is opening, work in progress. So there is no open work in progress at the beginning of the process and closing work in progress at the end of the process. So there is normally opening work in progress at the beginning of the process and closing work in progress at the end of the process. So when we shall be dealing with the process costing, we shall realize that at the beginning of the process, we have the opening work in progress, the incomplete units. Then we have the complete units at the end of the process. Number three. And kindly kama unatumia simu kuview class, make sure you don't tilt your phone. Make sure your phone is upright. So don't tilt your phone, don't auto-rotate. So kindly don't auto-rotate if you're using the phone. Now, another feature, output of one process becomes input of the next process. That's another characteristic that it is very, very important, that the output of one process becomes the input of the next process. That one is very, very important. You also need to remember that one. Point number 2 and number 3 are very important, that the output of one process becomes the input of another process. Another feature, there is always a loss in process costing. So there is always a loss. Remember, there must be a loss. Reason why we are saying there must be always a loss in process costing, because of the issue like evaporation, chemical heating. So kuna vitu kama hizo. So vitu kama hizo we cannot ignore them, or we cannot evade. Hatuwezi do away with them. So kama umeweka chemical, the chemical will heat up, and therefore in the process some item might tunaweza poteza some materials in the process, either through evaporation or through spoilage or whatever case. And therefore we conclude and say there must be a loss. There must be a loss in process costing. There must be a loss. So we call them normal loss. So there must be normal loss in process costing. There must be normal loss. Another Another characteristics we can add, that there might be more than one product. There might be more than one product at the end. At the end of process costing. So there might be more than one product. There might be more than one product. So when we carry out process costing, you might find out that at the end of the process, we might have more than one product that will be produced at the end of the process, and therefore, in process costing, we might have more than one product. And a good example is oil refining. So when oil refining is done, at the end of the day, once the process is completed, we shall have the real product, that is petrol, kerosene, and diesel. And we have other byproducts like bitumen, which is used for road construction. So we might have more than one product at the end of the process. Another one which we can add, all costs, both direct and indirect costs incurred in the process, are charged in the process costing. So we write it. So that I write. Number 6. All costs, both direct and indirect, both direct and indirect, both direct and indirect. So we are saying, let me write it again. All costs, both direct and indirect. So both costs, both direct and indirect, are charged in process costing. Are charged in process costing. That was very important. All the costs are charged in the process costing. All costs are charged in process costing. So you need to remember that one, that all costs are charged in process costing. Or you can also, or you can say, or they are accumulated in process costing. So they are charged or accumulated in process costing. So all costs are charged or accumulated in process costing. Then you have the second last, which isn't raisi. Or we say that product, not product, the process is.
Where's my book? Angel blue pen, red pen.
Kuna mtu ako na swali?
Is I think
So make sure you mute. So we have said that processes are homogeneous. And then the last one, we can conclude and say process is standardized. So the process is homogeneous, and also the process is standardized. So the process is homogeneous, and at the same time, the process is standardized. So make sure your phone is not tilted. Don't auto-rotate your phone. So make sure you don't auto-rotate your phone.
Just to inquire on something.
Yes.
When we say that this process is standardized, what do we really mean in terms of
when we say that process is standardized
and homogeneous?
Everything is standard, meaning the proportion of materials entered from one process to another is standardized. Yeah, it is measured in a particular manner, like things are standard. For example, if the input is required is 200, it must be proportional to the other input which is being introduced. So for example, let us do this. Wacha tuongee kwa Kiswahili. For example, in construction, wakipima simiti na mawe. So kuna hiyo ratio, the proportion. So there is this standard that we know, tukiweka urubaro 3 ya mchanga, then tutahitaji simiti kiasi fulani. So like things are standard in somehow, yani kuna that proportion which we know. So the process itself is standardized in nature, meaning the material being introduced are of particular measure. They are of particular measure. Okay,
Yes,
I hope
that's well understood.
Yeah, siko sawa?
Then if we are yeah, that's okay. Then we say it's homogeneous, because in my assumption, I think that if we have materials, because we have said actually output,
yes,
from the previous process is the input
yes,
to the other.
Yes.
Now, when we say this process is homogeneous, that means the materials that we have used in the past process,
yes,
are the same materials that we are going to use in the second process.
No, not necessarily.
Uh,
The materials are the same. The only difference is that they have undergone some process. So it might not be the actual material. Some items have been filtered so that we pass them to the next process. Okay.
Then
Yeah.
homogeneous
Homogeneous is like
means
something same. When we talk about something is homogeneous, it's like something is same. Silvio. So
yes,
same process.
yes.
For example, if it's about solid material, then we are talking about solid from process 1 up to the last process. If it is gaseous process, then from process 1 to the last process, it is all about the gaseous product, meaning that the materials within the process is same, is homogeneous. Silvio?
Yeah, true, well understood.
Yeah, I think that one is a bit explanatory. Anyway, let us move on. Let us talk about element of process costing before we do a question now. So number one of the elements is material stroke input. Material stroke input. So material stroke input, that is one of the elements. So material stroke input. And then we can say raw material issued in process 1, So raw material issued in process 1 is processed, then transferred, So raw material issued in process 1 is processed, then transferred to process 2. To process 2, and so on. So you need to remember that once we introduce a raw material in process 1, we call them inputs or materials. So those materials introduced in process 1, once processed, then we shall transfer those materials to process 2, and so on, until we come up with our final product. So any items in process 1 as material, once processed, then it becomes the work in progress, will be transferred to process 2, and so on until we come up with our final product. So that is one element. Number 2, we have labor labor cost. So number one, first element, we can call them material or material cost. We can call them material or material cost. Number two, we have labor cost, and you can say this is human resource. Human resource used in production. So human resource. So that is human resource used in production. Human resource. So when we talk about labor cost, we are talking about the human resource used in production. Then number three, we can also talk about production overhead cost. Production overhead cost. Production overhead. Production overhead cost, and we can conclude and say that production overhead cost refers to all the indirect costs incurred in production. So we can say refers to all the indirect cost, refers to all the indirect cost, yes, incurred in production. Incurred in production. So refers to all the indirect costs incurred in production. So those are some of the elements that we need to know when you talk about process costing. So refers to all the indirect meaning, remember material cost and labor cost are direct costs. So when we talk about material cost and labor cost, the two are direct costs, meaning direct cost refers to those costs that can be attributable to a particular product. So that can be attributable. This one you can get in an exam. So tuandike hapa NB, direct material. Direct material. So direct material is a combination. It is a combination of material cost and labor cost in most cases. So direct material is a combination of material cost and labor cost, and we say refers to all costs which can be easily be attributable, or traced to a particular product, So we talk about direct cost. So not direct cost, yes, direct cost of direct material. So let us use the word direct cost here, not material. Let us use the word direct cost, not material. So direct cost refers to all costs, which can be easily attributable or traced to a particular product. For example, kama for example umetengeneza meza iko na vitu kadhaa ndani. Kuna the wood itself, na kuna mishumari, na kuna glue, and so on. Now, between those items, kuna common item when unajua hapo. Ukiona meza unajua that's a common item. For example, the wood. So the wood makes the bigger part of the table, and therefore we can conclude and say the wood is direct cost, because we can easily say the cost of the wood ni ngapi. But kuna vitu kama mishumari. So mishumari unaweza pata ununua kilo moja, lakini kilo moja imetengeneza meza kama 10. So we cannot easily say that hii meza yetu ilitumia mishumari ya pesa fulani. So ni ngumu sana kujua the pesa ya mshumari, lakini kujua pesa ya mbao it is very easily, and therefore that cost of mbao kujua ni rahisi, we call it direct cost. Now hii pesa ingine ya tujui ya mishumari, glue maybe walipaka tu kadogo, walinunua chupa moja, hiyo chupa moja ikatengeneza meza kama 10. So kuna mari wapaka ka glue ndio waweke hiyo something juu. So maybe watumia guru kidogo sana, we don't know the price of that kaguru yenye waliweka hapo. So that one represent indirect cost. So indirect cost refer to the cost which cannot be attributable to the product. Cannot. So in an example, I can differentiate between direct cost and indirect cost. Just note that direct cost, we can easily attribute the cost of the item. We know it is this and this. But indirect cost, we cannot easily say the cost of that item, and therefore we can define it as refers to the cost which cannot be easily attributable to a particular product. That is indirect cost, also called production overhead cost. Also called production overhead cost. Also called production overhead cost. So when we talk about production overhead cost, refers to all the indirect costs incurred in production. And remember, indirect cost refers to the cost which cannot be easily attributable to a particular product. Then these two, material input and labor cost, form direct cost. We can easily say that material cost ni hii. Kama tulinunua material ya 200 kg, then we know it is 200 kg and their cost is this. Kama ni labor, kama wafanyikazi walilipwa, walikuwa 10, wakalipwa pesa fulani, then you can easily say that wafanyikazi walipwa hii pesa. Lakini kuna vitu zingine zikiundwa hapo ndani, kama we cannot easily say that this product incur this kind of a cost. So that's we call them indirect. Now, let's go to our illustration number 1. So remember tulisema tutafanya swali yetu na ile illustration niliwatumia. So there is an illustration niliwatumia. I want us to do those illustration before we do a question from past paper. Lazima tumalize leo part 1 of process costing so that kesho ama kesho kutwa tuanze part 2. Part 2 ni work in progress. So let us open that PDF of ours. So nilikuwa nimetumia kwa group. Kwa hivyo everyone has it. Let me share it for the purpose of reading the question. I'm sharing it, but nitarudi nitoe. So for the purpose of reading the question, let me share it with you. Sijui ni share na wapi ndio rahisi. Okay. So make sure kwenye tumeandika kwa board unaandika because I'm going to do away with it.
Hiyo madam wa miaka ngapi? Kama hii haijazeeka akakwambia
Can you read what is in the board? Is it possible in my screen?
Yes.
But haionekani mzuri. Anyway, let me try and tukisomanga hiyo swali. Now, input to a process is 2000 kg of material costing 2 million. Labor cost is 1 million. Production overhead are absorbed at 75% of the labor cost. The process output is 2000 kg, and then were transferred to warehouse. Required process costing. Let me try and share it from my Okay. Let me do away with the board. And then we continue. So I hope mtakuwa ameandika, so navuta, so that we can do that question. So keep make sure you are writing that question down. So make sure you are writing as nikivutanga so that we can do that question. Just make sure you have it. You can read it. So make sure you have it and you can read it. You can easily have a reference because I'm not going to share it again. So make sure you have a reference. So let me read it. So input to a process is 2,000 kg of material costing 2 million. Labor cost is 1 million. Production overhead are absorbed at 75% of the labor. Process output of 2,000 kg were transferred to the warehouse for sale. So if they were transferred for sale, meaning it is the end of the process. Because once we have the output for sale, we don't require anything. Now you can go back, let us go back to our screen, to our board. Now let's do that question. I want us to do that question. So I hope you have the reference. I also have the reference. So I hope on your side you also have the reference. Now, with this kind of a question, we are required to prepare process account. So let us prepare process account. So process account, I hope mnaona nini yangu. So in an exam, just draw a T. So in an exam, just draw a T account. So usijipreshe, just draw a T account. Sorry, someone was calling. Anyway, let us continue. Someone was calling, but let us continue. So in an exam, just draw a T account. Then you follow this procedure. Now let's read the question again. Now remember, all the costs are debited in process account. All costs are debited in process account. All costs. So all costs are debited in process account. Now, what is our first cost? We have material cost. So we start with the material cost. We have material cost. So material cost. So all the costs are debited. So material cost. What is our units? So our units is 2,000. 2,000 kg costing 2 million. So 2 million. I hope inaonekana. I hope inaonekana. So kama ionekani mniambie. Let me enlarge this one a bit. So it is 2 million. So 2 million that way. I hope that one inaonekana sasa. And then we have another cost, labor cost. Labor cost, how many million? So all the costs are debited. So any costs are debited in our account. So all costs are debited in our account. Then we also have production overhead. Production overhead. Now, from our question, what is our production overhead? They say production overhead are absorbed at 75% of labor cost. Now, production cost will be 75% of our labor. What's our labor? 1 million. So 75% of 1 million. So we write it here. 75% of 1 million. So 75% of 1 million, what will be that? So 75% of 1 million. This one is around 750. 750,000. Is that correct? Is that correct? Now workings. So once we have done that one, now we need workings. Workings. So we need workings. So this one is very, very important. Working number one that we need to calculate is normal loss. Normal loss. So working number one that we need to calculate is normal loss. And remember, normal loss is always credited in process account. Normal loss is always credited in process account. So how do you calculate normal loss? Normal loss is the percentage of input. Normal loss is the percentage of input. Normal loss is the percentage of input. But our question haijatupatia normal loss percentage, meaning there was no normal loss. There was no loss in this case. And therefore, our normal loss will be equal to 0. Kwa sababu hawajatupatia percentage. So there is no percentage in our question. So kama hawajatupatia percentage, ni kumaanisha our normal loss is 0. So we write it here. Normal loss is 0. Reason why? Kwa sababu swali hajatupatia. So we are going to assume that maybe there is no loss. So the percentage is 0. So meaning the percentage is 0, and therefore our loss is 0. So if we take percentage, for example, because I had normal loss, we assume the percentage is 0. So 0% times our input. What is our input? Remember, our input is in units, not in cost. In units. So inputs here, kumbuka this one, inputs in units. In units, you're very keen in units. So in this case, we don't have any percentage. So meaning it is 0% of input. Our input is how much? The material introduced is our input. 2,000 kg. Still will be 0. Still, it will be 0. Next, after we have calculated normal loss, we need to find expected production. Expected production. So how do you get expected production? Is equals to inputs in units minus normal loss. Normal loss in units. So inputs in units minus normal loss in units. What's our input? Our input is material introduced, which is 2,000 kg. Normal loss hakuna kwa sababu ni 0%. So 0% of 2,000 is 0. So minus 0 kg becomes. So our expected production is 2,000 kg. Our expected production is 2,000 kg. Next, tukishamaliza hiyo, we need also to calculate something else. We need also to calculate cost per unit. Cost per unit, which is equals to total cost minus normal loss cost. We divide it with expected production. Expected production. Now, in case I'm on my screen, muniambie ndio nisikuwe niko dunia yangu. So that's how you get cost per unit. So cost per unit. So cost per unit is equal to total cost minus normal loss cost, and then you divide it with expected production. So what's our total cost? Our total cost is all the costs in the debit side. Now, let us add them together. Let us add them together here. So 2 million plus 1 million plus 750,000. What will be the total cost? So itakuwa around 37. If you add them together, that is 750,000. So this one is our total cost. So let us calculate here. Cost per unit. Cost per unit is equals to, that is 750,000 minus normal loss. Normal loss, kumbuka tulisema the percentage was 0, and therefore everything is 0. Minus 0. We divide it with the expected production. What's our expected production here? Can you see it? 2,000. Nayona, we divide it with. So make sure you don't auto-rotate your phone. Now, what will be the cost per unit? The cost per unit, so that is 750,000 divided by 2,000. That will be around Kenya shillings 1875 per kg. 1875 per kg. Now, another working we need is either abnormal gain or loss. So abnormal, another working, abnormal gain or loss. Now, in this case, because the normal loss is 0, then abnormal loss or gain is 0. So we don't need a working. So wakati tutakuwa na working, wakati our normal loss is not hatujapatiwa, yani ni 0%. So kama hujapatiwa normal loss, ni kumaanisha the percentage is 0. And therefore in this case, also this one becomes 0 kama haujapatiwa the percentage of loss. But kama umepatiwa, then we need to calculate the abnormal gain or loss. In this case, we don't need a working. Tutafanya baadaye. We shall look for a question. So it is 0. So we don't have a gain or a loss. So it is 0. Now, we need output. Now, remember, the output of this process is the input of the next process, or the amount to be sold. Now, from our question, let us go back to our question. If you read the information number 3, the process output is 2,000 kg. Mayona, the process output is 2,000 kg. What is cost per unit? 1875. 1875. Here, we have it here. So from our question, we can read that the process output is 2,000 kg were transferred to the warehouse for resale. So the output is the final product. So the output wametuambia kwa swali yetu ni 2,000 kg. Now 2,000 kg is the final. Meaning 2,000 kg will be sold at which price? So output goes with cost per unit. So output goes with cost per unit. So our units is 2,000. Our cost per unit is 1875. So 2,000 times 1875 becomes 37,50,000. Then we balance. So we add. So the balancing figure on the debit and the credit side must be the same. So 37,50,000. So that is illustration number 1A. Illustration A. So that one is illustration A. That one is how you're supposed to do process costing using illustration A. I want us to go to illustration number 1, the manufacturing. So illustration number 1, the manufacturing. So andikanga hiyo nikitafutanga hiyo illustration, but I think you have the question. So I hope screen inaonekana square, ionekani. Martin, inaonekana? Is it okay?
It's visible.
It's okay, Feb? Okay. Okay, let's go to the illustration number next. As you comprehend on that, let me share illustration number 2. From illustration A, we go to illustration number 2. So let me read as nikishare. I'm reading it. Nikitafutanga. So, and it is saying, the manufacturing of process G requires 3 distinct process, that is process 1, 2, and 3, before completion. The product is passed from process 3 to finished good after processing. The following information was obtained in respect to product G for the month of July. 3,000 units of raw material at Kenya shillings 25 were issued to process 1, and the cost incurred is provided below. Production overhead is absorbed by each process at 150% of direct labor. There was no stock of raw material and work in progress at the beginning and at the end of process 1, 23 required. Prepare process 1, 2, and 3. So a bit kidogo ni I want to share. So I'm doing away with my screen. So no, the navuta. So I hope umeandika ndio nianze kushare. So I want to do away with this one. I hope mko umeandika.